Well, it's over. The Arizona Diamondbacks 2024 season has come to an end, and they are eliminated from playoff contention. It's a sad day around here. Don't go anywhere. We're going to discuss all that happened, including lots from the clubhouse and from Jace Field after today's doubleheader. So stay tuned. At the very least, it's the last time we have to hear that goddamn song. Welcome in to the PHNX D-Backs podcast right here at PHNX. We are currently coming to you live from Studio K, presented by our friends at Circle K. Of course, shout out to them. And it's America's thirst stop, so go get yourself something to drink after the bad taste left in your mouth after watching today's doubleheader between the Mets and the Braves. Of course, my name is Derek Montia, occasionally known as your mayor of PHNX. I'm flanked by two of my best buddies. Got Damon Farrell over here, aka Damon Dog, on my right. And I got the Thunderstick, Jesse Friedman, over here to my left. He's still not getting the vice mayor title back ever again. But today was a tough day. The Diamondbacks were officially eliminated from playoff contention after the Mets and the Braves split their doubleheader. And this one definitely, this was a tough day. This was rough to go to the clubhouse and see the guys packing up their stuff. This was rough to see the effort that the Mets put forth in game 2, which is something we absolutely knew was going to happen, but we didn't even know the lows that they were going to sink to as far as how little of an effort they were going to give. But what are your guys' thoughts, of course, today? Jesse, I'll start with you. I know that you had a lot of plans to be on an airplane probably very soon, if not this evening, tomorrow morning, to go cover this team on the road. So what is your initial reaction to what happened here?
I'm not surprised, frankly. I mean, I think in a larger sense, I'm surprised. You know, if you'd asked me a couple weeks ago if I thought the D-backs were going to make the playoffs, sure, I definitely would have said yes. Yeah. So in that sense, I'm surprised. But going into today, it was hard not to expect exactly this outcome, whether it was the Mets winning the first game and the Braves winning the second, or the Braves winning the first game and the Mets winning the second. We talked about this several days ago, the possibility that this could happen, that the Diamondbacks could be, that their season could be on the line and depend on an unmotivated baseball team beating another team with its season on the line, that's what it could come down to for the Diamondbacks. And that's what it came down to today. And it went about as we expected, but that doesn't make this any less brutal for fans, for the players themselves, which we'll get to in a second. We have a whole lot of video from the clubhouse reaction to what happened today. This was the biggest collapse in Diamondbacks history. There's no getting around it. We talked about it recently, 2018 versus this year. There's really no comparison. It's a tough day to be a D-backs fan.
It really, really is, Jesse.
How are you doing over there, Damon? How are you feeling?
We were worried about you.
I am wearing this one.
Yeah.
Like you would it totally expect me to. The highs are really high and the lows are really low.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think before the season, I mean, you did the Google document voting thing, and I believe I said that the Diamondbacks making the postseason was a successful season to me.
Yeah.
And although they had a better record than last year, the fact that they didn't make the playoffs, didn't find a way to get in, and they had such a good opportunity to, it makes it feel like the season is a complete failure. And I know it boils down to one game, which is crazy. It's the difference between what I would consider a success and a failure, but it really does. And this one hurts, a lot more than I feel like a typical end to a season. Even if you make the playoffs and lose, like this is just this team just totally collapsed.
They absolutely did. And I mean, again, there's other teams that are experiencing something like the Diamondbacks are experiencing, that they got close, they were in the playoff hunt, but they were like the Cubs, 6 games back, maybe 7 games back. And you still go back and pick apart your season when you lose and you were that close to a playoff spot. The Diamondbacks literally couldn't have been closer to a playoff spot. One single game, changes this season for them, changes what we are talking about right now, changes that sad ass atmosphere that we experienced over there of seeing a bunch of best friends giving each other hugs like they're not going to see each other until next summer camp, right? Like this was devastating. And I think that what makes it worse is how close they were, right? That's what really stings here. The Diamondbacks end up tied, and I think we can go ahead and take a look at it now, but let's take a look at the final wild card graphic before we throw this whole thing in the trash for the season. The Diamondbacks end up in a 3-way tie there with the Mets, the Braves, and at 89 and 73. And we've talked about it a bunch, right? Like you'd be hard pressed to ask me at the beginning of the season if the Diamondbacks won 89 games if they'd make the playoffs and have me say no, right? And I'm sure we can all agree with that. But what makes this more brutal is the fact that they lost key games to these particular teams that ended up coming back to bite them, specifically the Braves. And again, you can talk about that early series a lot, and we're going to, because we're going to CSI the hell out of this and figure out exactly where things really went wrong for this team and where were the big games that they dropped. But that probably sticks out as much as the 8-0 or the 8-run comeback that they allowed the Brewers to pull off.
I mean, I keep going back to August 25th, right? That's the day the Diamondbacks reached their high water mark. They were 19 games over 500. They were 75 and 56, and they had a 7-game lead. They had the top wild card spot. They had a 7-game lead, not over the second wild card team, but over the Mets, who were in 4th place at the time and were the closest threat to overtaking them and removing them from the postseason race. 7 games is a lot with about a month left in the season, right? And it turned out that 7-game lead almost entirely evaporated in the span of about 8 or 9 days. The Mets went on a crazy run. The D-backs really struggled there in late August and early September. And, the D-backs were able to stay afloat for a while. It obviously came down to the not just the last day of the season, but the day after the last day of the season, which will always blow my mind about this year. But since August 25th, from that day on, the Diamondbacks went 14 and 17. The Braves went 19 and 13. The Padres went 19 and 11, and the Mets went 21 and 10. And it was just going to be really hard for the Diamondbacks to keep up with those teams playing that well. And that's a part of the narrative of this season. It's not just that the D-backs struggled at the end, which they did. It's also that 89 wins is a lot of wins to not make the postseason, right? Yeah. The bar was set pretty dang high this year with how things turned out. And credit to the Mets and the Padres and the Braves who ended the season all very, very well.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give credit to the Mets with the way that they were swinging at every damn pitch today. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that more, but Ina's right. The wheels fell off the wagon. Sadly, your wagon was killed by your starting pitching and your bullpen ERA, I suppose, and dysentery. But that's a whole other video game. What really sucks here was talking to some of the guys. And, of course, the big topic today was looking back on those winnable games. And I don't think that too many shied away from saying that they were, going to think about some of those losses, especially recently, a lot. And I believe we have Corbin Carroll, who we'll start things off with Corbin because I know he's our guy. He's the one that, especially this season, I know a lot of people look to, and honestly, since July has been just probably one of the most solid players for this team, one of the best players on the Arizona Diamondbacks once again. But here's what he had to say about looking back on winnable games.
Yep, I mean, for sure. For any baseball team, for any baseball season, you can look back and there's so many games that can go in your favor and push that win total to one more, and you're right in the dance. So I think that's not maybe the most helpful or healthy way to look at it, but it's real and it's there, and just the bigger picture and bigger job is taking this year and learning from it and being able to come out next year and and get the job done. You know, have our fate in our own hands.
I think what's weird about this is that, you know, obviously you want to make the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. But I guess the severity of the situation seemed so much more extreme due to the fact that they were eliminated right here so close to the playoffs. And like, I felt like the mood, obviously, with the way things went was, you know, terrible for these guys. And there's a lot of unanswered questions about who's going to come back. I know we have Christian Walker, questions surrounding him.
There's some other guys too.
I mean, I got a couple of hugs from people and was told, like, thank you for everything. It was nice, like knowing you. Like, some of these guys are like, yeah, this is my last time in this clubhouse.
That's
like,
dark.
Yeah, it was dark. Even guys, I'm like, wait a minute, I know your contract situation. I don't know where you're at. But again, I think it was the mood, right? It was like why everything was so heavy is it did feel like this wasn't just like the end of this season. This felt like this was somehow the end of the road for this particular team. I don't feel like that's going to be the case next year.
I mean,
we'll see a lot of the same guys.
We were having these conversations. It's natural. Like when your business revolves around it, they were definitely thinking about being in the playoffs. There's no doubt in the world about it. Like they were so close to it. They saw the light at the end of the tunnel.
I mean, they had their bags packed. They had an airplane ready to go.
Well, they had to do that. I think just for
logistical
reasons. But I'm saying that, like, you're 7 games up with a month left. You're thinking about, well, you know, we're going to make the playoffs. Like, there's no doubt in your mind, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think they saw that light at the end of the tunnel, and it just, it made them, I don't know, lose sight of, you still got to win a couple more games to get in, because the Mets and the Braves are playing probably the best baseball in the league at that point. And the Padres, really. So,
and the Mets even lost some down the stretch.
Just a tough combo.
The Mets weren't great, right? And the Mets.
The D-backs got more help over the final weekend than I thought they would, honestly.
Yeah.
From the Brewers taking 2 out of 3 from the Mets, and the Braves losing the finale against the Royals.
Can't lose that Saturday game.
Yeah.
You absolutely, unequivocally cannot lose that game. It's the same thing as that World Series game, right? Where they left a million runners on base. This time they didn't get anybody on base, but that's the problem. The offense didn't show up.
They did have 2 hits in that game.
Yeah,
Damon.
that's what I'm saying. Like, the offense didn't show up. Your best reliever is the reason that the other team scores. Like, that was the end of the season, essentially.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Elise might have been right. They might have needed to win every game. She says the D-backs shot themselves in the foot and expected everyone else to do the same.
And to be fair, they kind of did the same thing last year, and it worked. and they last year they also lost 4 out of their last 6 games. It was kind of a similar situation. It's just that, again, the bar was set so much higher this season. You couldn't count on the Reds and the Cubs, and some of those teams last season just did not have anywhere near the talent level, I think, as the teams the D-backs were competing with this year.
Well, we do know that we were a little frustrated with the way the Mets played in that second game, and we also know that maybe they're going to put it in a much nicer way, but maybe some of the players were a little bit too. First, we have Christian Walker on if he was frustrated on how that second game was played today of that doubleheader.
You're in preview mode.
You know, that's how any team would have navigated it. I think, if anything, the frustration is just that, you know, there were games after the season was over. You know, I think everybody plays their last game on the same day for that reason. So, you know, you're not sure how it shakes out till it happens. But, I mean, anybody would have handled those games exactly the way they have. And that's just how it goes. You know, if we're unhappy about it, you know, that's the time to, you know, look inward and say, you know, we could have done something more, and, you know, we should have played better.
And that's a man whose future is still unknown with this team. And like, I think we got a lot of that today. We got a lot of players and people saying, like, they understand they would have played the game the same way if the Diamondbacks were in a similar position as the Mets. But
yeah,
it still just felt kind of gross to watch the Mets give such a half effort in a baseball game, despite the fact that they'd already pulled out several of their starters, and, you know, we're kind of going with a little bit of a B lineup. They still put up a good lineup, though.
They put out a better lineup than I expected. Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, those guys started. Starling Marte was in there, Tyrone Taylor, Jose Iglesias. we do have to separate Joey Lucchesi from the rest of the conversation, because Joey Lucchesi,
Shoved.
that man pitched the game of his life.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he threw 110 pitches. His job was basically to just go out there and kind of eat as many innings as he possibly could, maybe more innings than than he ideally would in a normal situation. And he went out there and totally shoved, right? 6 innings of 1-run ball. And yeah, there's kind of a variety of perspectives from D-backs players on like kind of their feelings on the second game and what it looked like to them. Merrill Kelly is one guy who maybe has a slightly different perspective than what Christian Walker had. Let's go to that clip. Here's Merrill Kelly talking about what he saw in the second game and his realistic what he really felt about the Mets' efforts in that one.
For us, not having the control and knowing that, and no fault to the Mets, I think any team in that position is going to do the same thing, right? They're looking forward to tomorrow. They know they're in. They know they're not going to play their main guys, and they know they're not going to try to get hurt. So, they'll probably tell you that their effort was there, but I think if they can't look in the mirror and say that they weren't trying as hard as they possibly could today, I think they'd be lying, and I think that's natural, right? I think any team in that position would do the same thing. It's just unfortunate that that's the game that our fate is decided.
And I'll assure you that there was no happiness going on in that clubhouse. But I also
I mean, there was like guys saying goodbyes and whatnot.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I wouldn't say it was a happier clubhouse than what you would find just at the end of a normal loss. Because this wasn't just...
Well, it's because there was a lot of guys saying goodbye to each
exactly,
other.
Exactly.
And there was a lot of uncertainty if these guys are going to see each other. You could also tell guys were making plans literally for this weekend and such to see each other. And I think even maybe for tonight, because they were talking about how they were going to get places and stuff. But I mean, it's also understandable, right? This is a long, grueling season. And these guys really do like each other. But in a way, honestly, this is the last time that they might see some of their teammates from this particular team, at least in this clubhouse, so but also there was a lot of sadness in the locker room as well. There were a lot of guys that you could tell were having a lot of regrets about what was going on. I mean, almost more than sadness, it looked like guys were a little shell-shocked, just kind of standing around still kind of in a bit of disbelief as to what has happened to this team over the course of this last month, right? But the Diamondbacks found themselves, unfortunately, rooting for whoever. We had Perdomo tell us that he was rooting for guys originally for the Braves because he had a few friends over there. And then he had to turn his interests towards rooting for the Mets. Zac Gallen also talked about rooting for the Mets and for Joey Lucchesi, who once again had himself an incredible day out there on the mound for the Mets.
Yeah, it's a little strange, that's for sure. But it's for selfish purposes. So you're like, yeah, I'll root for whoever I got to root for. I don't know. I mean, I know there was jokes going around on someone gets a big hit or a guy turns in a big performance, like send them the best bottle of tequila ever. Fine. So, unfortunately for them, they're not getting any of those prizes from us. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's disappointment, really.
With AC, make a case for still getting fathers.
Yeah, I mean, he kept him in it. I mean, that's the thing. I know that, and for him to throw, I think he threw 110 pitches, something like that. Yeah, so, and I would imagine, throwing 110 pitches in a game that was meaningless for your team. I mean, that shows a lot of character. And I tip my cap to that. I mean, it's kind of, especially for us, what was in line for us, for him to go out there and give a 1-run effort and throw 110 pitches in a game where they're just waiting 9 innings to celebrate. It's pretty cool if you ask me.
I wanted to pay the clubby $100 to stop taping boxes during
We apologize for all the tape sounds in the background.
I mean, that's also part of it. Like, I think maybe, part of the look of shock was how fast they were, like, going from watching the game, which apparently the guys were all watching it in the clubhouse together, to
Zac Gallen, their stuff. Yeah, Zac Gallen, he apparently was throwing on the field. He was playing catch on the field.
There's the saddest video of all time of Zac Gallen walking off the field right when the game ends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, he was asked about that, and it was like, "Hey, were you just doing it?" I think Jesse asked. If
Yeah,
you just
I
do
asked.
unders.
I was curious. Yeah, were you just antsy, like you needed to move around? And he was like, "No, like if we get in, I'm starting game 1 tomorrow, right? Like I've got to be dialed in and ready to go."
I love that. Pay that man.
But yeah, I mean, what a scene, right? Like Zac Gallen playing catch, theoretically getting ready for a game 1 start, as just above him on the jumbotron, the New York Mets are they weren't getting destroyed by the Braves, but it was kind of clear what the outcome was going to be. So,
Good pitching performance from the Mets, though, like Zach was talking about.
Yeah, Joey Lucchese was real close to getting some nice tequila from the D-backs this offseason. he just I guess it's not really he who blew it. It was the Mets offense that blew it.
For sure.
I think Joey still deserves it, to be honest. That's my opinion.
That's fair.
I don't know. I don't feel inclined to give him a gift for any reason. But
you get nothing now.
Jesse, you mentioned that like the Mets still played some of their better hitters. Like
They
Pete
did.
Alonso played, and I think really like to me it was over the second Pete Alonso rolled over into that like terrible ground ball with runners in scoring position.
Yeah.
If you need Pete Alonso to get a hit there to have a chance. Like I think there was still a chance at that point. It felt bad, but you're like, hey, maybe Pete Alonso wants to stat pad his RBI total a little bit,
Yeah.
And he just the weakest ground ball you've ever seen. The Mets offense completely blew it tonight. They didn't try.
I mean, yeah, and I don't want to say that they didn't try completely. Like there were moments here and there. They had 2 on, nobody out at one point. Like I don't think they were up there trying to get out as soon as they could, but they clearly were not locked in. They clearly were not in the mode of we are really
Jesse,
trying to win this game.
Stop it. They had like 11 strikeouts in their first 22 batters of that game. They were just swinging at everything.
Their chase rate was off the charts insane.
Oh
they
my
swung
God.
When Grant Holmes was on the mound, they swung at 48% of pitches outside the zone. League average is like 26%. So yes, they were way overly aggressive. I don't think they weren't trying, but they were way overly aggressive.
Their plate approaches were ridiculous.
Yes, exactly. So it's like, I guess maybe it's semantics, whether you count that as not trying or not. But yeah, they were not putting their best foot forward. In this game.
They were uncompetitive plate approaches.
Yes.
Is the best way of putting it. Like they weren't going out there acting like it was a game that they cared about winning at all. It was like a spring training type vibe to it.
Yeah.
Get some hacks. I think you probably even care more about spring training, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this much in regards to some of their hacks today. They just wanted to get out of there, is what it really felt like. And honestly, I hope both teams get swept in the wild card round in 2 games. That's what I
You know what I
That's
want?
what they deserve.
I actually was thinking about this earlier, and this is where I really cook. This is why you have me with a microphone in front of my face, because this is like hater energy.
This isn't good.
The Mets let the Braves, who dog walk that division every single year for 3 decades, however long the Braves have owned the NL East, they let them just get into the playoffs. The funniest timeline is the Mets losing in the NLCS to the Braves, and the Braves
That's true.
like beating the crap out of them while the Mets let them get into the playoffs over our spot. That's the absolute funniest timeline to me. That's what I will be rooting for.
I know.
Well, yeah. I mean, it didn't make sense. To be fair, it didn't make any sense for the Mets to like actually go full throttle in the sense of playing all their best players.
If they lose
right?
in the NLCS to the Braves, all of a sudden we're thinking a little bit differently about that.
But the counter argument is, do they even get to the NLCS if they throw Luis Severino or something instead of, if they make Francisco Lindor play 2 games when apparently his back is broken.
We're doing reckless speculation over here, Jesse. This isn't like let's put semantics into it. This is Mets losers. You should have tried and won the baseball game to help the Diamondbacks out.
That's a fair, reasonable take.
Well, we have more from the clubhouse, and this time it is Perdomo talking about Torey's message. No, we don't have that. All right. We got Merrill on the frustration from losing this game, and I'm sure he echoes his teammates' feelings about this as well. Here's what he had to say.
I think it's frustrated, I think is a good word. Disappointed, just kind of all over the map. Obviously, it sucks saying bye to all the guys. It's never fun at the end of the year. I think frustrated just because I think I think we controlled our own destiny for a little while there, and I think we kind of let it slip out of our fingers. We had a pretty sizable lead going into the last little while of the season, and I think there were a couple key games that, if we look back on it, obviously you can't predict baseball. You can't say you should have won those games, but there's a lot of games that I think that we let go. Obviously, that last game in Milwaukee comes to mind. A couple games against the Rockies, a couple games against the Giants. It just sucks sitting here today knowing that if we would have just squeaked out one more game, that we wouldn't be in this position. So,
yeah, that's it. And I'm glad he brought up those games, but there's a lot of games during the season, and Elise says it here. Can we talk about all the games throughout the season that we didn't try and keep the deficit close? Torey's approach with having a bullpen that essentially is a different bullpen when they're up versus when they're behind, saving, like you said, saving all of our bullpen arms. Now, the bullpen got worn out, so, I don't know.
That's sort of the counter argument there. I think there are specific games that you could maybe look at. Like, I think that is a valid point, but I don't really view that as like the Diamondbacks pitching this season, frankly, was pretty ineffective across the board.
Yes.
And that's something that we're going to talk a lot about in these next few days and over the offseason is how does this team get back to a competent pitching staff? Because frankly, this group just really was not that for much of the season. And I know some people in the chat are talking about like, oh, you guys are just talking about the doubleheader, and that's the only reason that they were eliminated today. And that's not at all what we're saying, right? The Diamondbacks are not making the playoffs because they didn't win enough games. Two things can be true, right? Did they get a little screwed with the setup of today's doubleheader? 100% they did.
So did the Mets and the Braves.
Yeah, the Mets and the Braves also got a little bit screwed because going into the postseason tomorrow, they just played a doubleheader. That's not an ideal scenario.
I'm going to win this struggle off, though. The Diamondbacks definitely win this. The who got it the worst. I think.
Because their path to just get in the first place was compromised, whereas the Braves and Mets are more so compromised once they get in. Yeah. But two things can be true, right? Did they get a little bit screwed in the situation today? Yes. But should the Diamondbacks have been in a position where they needed a very odd outcome in a doubleheader today? They shouldn't have been in this spot, right? They were in very, very good position to make the postseason about a week ago, and they went 2-5 to end the season, and they squandered that opportunity. And they have to take responsibility as a result of that.
Diamondbacks pitching staff was 27th, had the 27th best ERA in baseball this season at 4.62.
So bad.
Which teams are worse than them?
Which teams are worse than that, Jesse? That's a great question. It's the Chicago White Sox at 4.68.
So the White Sox were worse. Okay.
They were worse, but just slightly worse at 4.68. The Miami Marlins had a 4.73 ERA, and of course the Colorado Rockies that play at Coors Field had a 5.47 ERA. The Diamondbacks were down with the worst teams of baseball: the Los Angeles Angels, the Oakland Athletics, the Washington Nationals, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Giants, the Reds, all had better ERAs as a team this season than the Arizona Diamondbacks. If you really want to get down to this, which of course we now will have plenty of time to dissect this season and play all the what ifs, but if you really want to get down to it, it was pitching. The Diamondbacks had the best offense in all of baseball, even though it wasn't consistent. The Diamondbacks had the most huge runs and huge hits in all across baseball. That's what made their offensive numbers go up and be the top offense or score the most runs in Major League Baseball. It's not consistent. They weren't nearly as consistent.
It was a pretty good offense.
It was a pretty good offense, but it had to be in order for them to win because of how bad their pitching was.
There were some moments where the offense was probably a little phony for sure. Just in terms of like huge 20-run victories. There was 2 of them, weren't there? That's pretty ridiculous. I understand what you're saying there. I think that they weren't always the best in huge moments this season, in my opinion. I think in clutch moments, I'd love to look into that a little bit more, but it didn't feel like they were they were a very clutch offense this year.
Yeah.
But regardless, when you score the most runs in baseball, your pitching needs to be at a level to get you into the playoffs. Even if it is a little bit phony, it's still the number 1 most runs scored in baseball.
Right. Well, this is the moment Thunderbolt's been waiting for the most. Here we have Torey Lovullo on his statement after
Juice box
the season
time.
wrapped.
This hurts. This is a really difficult situation that we're all kind of navigating through. You can't really predict the way the season's going to end, and then you got to wait around an entire day to find out what your fate is. I've never experienced anything like that. I don't think any of the guys did either. But we got in one place and in one space. There was a lot of cheering. There was a lot of excitement for the entire second game, and then it became very somber once we learned of the news. I got in front of the team, and I thanked them for the effort they gave me, the trust that they placed in my hands and the coaches, and we had a good year. We had a really good year, and I want to make sure that they understood that. And despite not making the playoffs, as frustrating as this last week was, we've got some growing and learning to do, but to remember that the sun will come up tomorrow, and we're going to fight through this. And we have a lot of ground to cover this offseason. We have a lot of baseball games to win in the future. Hopefully more playoff games are in the cards for us. Just wanted to remind them of all that stuff. I woke up this morning, I put on my lucky shirt, put on my lucky socks, my lucky shorts. I think everybody in the Valley did that. I think we had a room full of people that went and did the same thing today. Just didn't happen. And it stinks. It really stinks, and it really hurts. It cuts deep. Like I told you guys last year at this very podium after we lost Game 5 of the World Series, we've got to continue learning and growing. We can't sit still. We're going to have to figure this out. We're going to figure out a way to continue playing until we win the last game, and we're pouring champagne on one another. That's our goal every single year. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for the time. I appreciate you guys, each and every one of you. Appreciate you guys.
That's that. What were your thoughts on what he had to say about the season?
Yeah, I mean, it's very typical Torey stuff, right? Definitely takes kind of a positive outlook on the season that the Diamondbacks did have, and the fact that they had 89 wins, which to their credit is again, like, that's a good number. If you had told any of us entering the season that the D-backs were going to win 89 games, it'd be hard to call that a failure from the outset. But at the same time, you can also hear Torey there a little bit frustrated and wanting to have more, right? Wanting to be pouring champagne on each other after the last day of the baseball season. That's ultimately the goal for this team. And he was far less emotional today than he was last year, which on the surface maybe seems odd because the D-backs last year had way more success than they did this year. But also, the D-backs were really, really close last year, right? When you get that close to winning a World Series, I can understand it just sort of, kind of overtaking you in that moment that you got that close and you weren't quite able to finish the job. This year, the D-backs didn't even get a chance to start that journey, right? So, I know that Torey Lovullo is not the most popular guy around here these days, at least from what I read on Twitter and what I see in the comments here in the chat. But at the same time, I think he's a good leader for this team, and he's not going anywhere. No matter what, no matter what people want. Yeah. Torey Lovullo is here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future.
I agree with that, and I know there's some people saying like Mike Hazen needs to, part ways with Torey. I don't really think so, but every manager is going to have moves that they make throughout the course of a season that you question and that don't lead to success. That's just the way that it happens. I know that there's a lot of people mad with Craig Counsell right now in Chicago, kind of feeling a similar feeling, which is, blaming again the team's lack of making the postseason on the manager. I get it. I understand the feelings about that. And sometimes, I guess as a fan of a team, what you would like to see is change so that it inspires some sort of hope in you that new leadership or a new coach is going, to change things drastically. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know how Torey's coaching staff around him is going to change. I know there was some talk of Jeff Bannister potentially getting a managing job around baseball.
Could happen.
There also is the possibility of Brent Strom retiring or no longer, being the pitching coach for this team. And I don't know if those things are going to happen, but it does feel like, this team has been lucky to have the coaching staff. I just think that there are some things that make you question, obviously, what's going on, right? Like when the pitching staff is all having the issues that they're kind of having collectively as a group, you do wonder what's going on and if this is something that maybe needs to be addressed as far as, the coach is concerned. And same thing with Torey as far as managing games. There are a lot of times where things he didn't work out. And I know we've discussed a lot of those, right? But there's also, the entire 2023 postseason where he seemed to pull all the right levers. And I also know that throughout this season, there were stretches where he absolutely is, has been a big factor as to how this team won games. But
we talked about it, I think, on Friday's show. I mentioned it. I said, I don't think Torey had a very good season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think you can say that maybe Torey could have done a better job managing games, and yet also not think that he, surely needs to be fired.
Absolutely. That's where I'm at. Like, obviously, Torey is one season removed from, like you said, Derek, he was King Midas. Every move that he made was the best possible move. Right. Every pinch hitter was coming through. Like, it was a great playoff run. You can't just ignore that completely. He had a bad season, in my opinion. There were a lot of times where it felt like he sacrificed the short term for the potential long term down the road. And it didn't, I don't feel like those necessarily worked out for us, especially not when you consider the fact that we're not in the postseason and we needed one more game here and there. So I think that's where the mistakes were made, if I had to point at anything. And I think Torey he's humble enough to learn from that kind of stuff. I honestly think that. And I don't want him gone by any stretch, but he definitely didn't have a strong season.
I'm guessing Nando there in the chat is a Dodgers fan, because he told us that take Dave Roberts. Is that what you people want? Is that what you want?
I'm okay.
Be careful what you wish for. All right. Well, we'll get around to a couple of more videos and some more on what happened to this tragic Diamondbacks season here shortly. We did want to thank you guys for being here in the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. Every single one of you. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know this hurts, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to lament with us. There was somebody in here earlier screaming that he had to leave because he didn't like what we were talking about. Well, I apologize to even him. I would have liked him to stay, but so long, I guess, is all I have to say to that. Of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to do so now. Sign up for notifications, hit that notifications button. That way you don't miss whenever we go live. Of course, we're going to have a little bit more stable of a schedule around here now without playoff baseball. So you'll be able to catch us here regularly around 1 p.m. every single day. But make sure to hit that notifications button, because we never know when we're going to be doing some emergency podcasts. Of course, if you're listening on the audio podcasting side, make sure you subscribe over there. Make sure you leave us a review. We appreciate that. And subscribe on whatever your favorite audio podcasting app is. Most importantly, hit that like if you're here on the YouTube show right now. It's for me. This guy doesn't care. This guy's so sad that your likes are meaningless to him right now. But I can still use a little.
I'd actually argue that the likes are the only thing that are keeping me going.
That could be. The sports has hurt him.
I don't
very
know.
Much.
I don't know if I'm going to get up tomorrow morning unless I get
100 likes.
100 likes on this video.
There you go. All right. Well,
it's a very arbitrary number.
Yeah. But it's a nice round number. 3 digits. We like that around here. We will get to some more, like I said, from the clubhouse here. But first, I get to talk to you guys right now about Blue Chew. And I don't know. I'm not really normally I'd be thrilled right now. I don't know if I can muster up the true excitement that I normally feel inside to talk about Blue Chew, which is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost in a chewable form. So the big thing here is that after a night like this, you might need something, of course, to, a little pick-me-up, maybe something to get your mind off of the Diamondbacks 2024 season. And that thing could be the best sex of your life, is basically what I'm saying. Jesse earmuffs. With Blue Chew, men everywhere are excited to see the postman, because when your package arrives, it means your package has arrived. They say there's nothing sexier than confidence. That's how I get by in life. But Blue Chew can help you give you confidence where it counts. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free when you use our promo code ALLCITY at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code ALLCITY to receive your first month for free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And of course, we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast. We also thank Gila River Resorts and Casinos, because no one does it better. We will be hosting our Cardinals and our Suns watch parties, and obviously not our Major League Baseball playoff watch parties, out at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. So make sure to join us for those stay tuned for so much information, how you can come hang out with this guy and the Cardinals crew. Of course,
it's the only thing keeping me going, actually.
that
yeah,
and the likes, right?
The likes and
trips to Gila River.
The fact that I get to go back to Gila River Wild Horse Pass on Sunday for our away watch party.
For sure.
Against the 49ers, which will certainly be a victory against the Cardinals versus the San Francisco 49ers. Sports is fun.
Man. He's a broken man. A good way to fix him, though, would be to take him on a trip to Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Lounge at a resort. Just hang out by the pool to get away from maybe sports for a little bit, or go check out the sports book, which is most likely where we'll be having ourselves a good time. They also have over 4,500 slots and live table games at all their locations, so don't miss out on anything they have to offer at Wild Horse Pass, Lone Butte, Vikiva, and Santan Mountain. So you do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playathila.com for more details. All right, well, I guess one thing before we go, I do have to give this man a little pick me up. So let's get a Jerry P video in here. We have Geraldo Perdomo, who almost made me cry. He gave me a bigger handshake than everybody else. Jesse can attest to it. I don't know what that was about, but Jerry, I love you. Here's what Jerry had to say about Torey's parting words to the team and his outlook on next season.
He apologized with us, and he showed to us how sad he feel, because for everybody know how hard we play, how much he loved this game, and I think it's not for him, it's just for everyone. It's kind of sad, But like I said, we just need to move on and be ready for the next season. That's our number one priority right now. Get everybody healthy. Bring some new player or old player back here and just do some damage from the day one.
I like to bring back old players too. He's like looking over at Christian Walker, like that guy. Bring that guy back. Yeah, I mean, again, I know a lot of people want, I guess, fire and anger out of Torey, but honestly, based on what we know about him, that's not what you're going to get. And maybe that's why some of you feel he's not the right man for the job, and I can't change your opinion about that. But what I can say is that the sentiment was that Torey felt very apologetic to his players today, that he didn't do enough for them to get them into the playoffs. Torey very much resents and regrets these losses, especially the ones lately that made the difference in their season and their trajectory, right? But I mean, you definitely get the sense from these players that, again, it's not really about, it's not about anger today. It's just more about disappointment that they couldn't get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the hardest things about this is that if the Diamondbacks had gotten into the postseason, they're a very interesting team once they get there, right? We obviously saw this play out a season ago. Last year, they had really no expectations whatsoever and went on that run. This year, there would be some expectations, and I think the team also has the talent level to meet those expectations. One of the things in the last week of the season that actually was pretty good for the D-backs, sort of went under the radar, is their starting pitching. Merrill Kelly deserved a much better final line than he got in his last game. Eduardo Rodriguez pitched pretty dang well in that game against the Padres, despite the results. Brandon Pfaadt looked really good on Sunday. Zac Gallen finished on a very, very high note against the Giants as well. This is still a team where if you squint, you can, I mean, you don't even really have to squint, really. This is a team where if they're in the postseason, obviously anything can happen in the MLB playoffs, but if they're in the postseason, it's not that hard to imagine them going on a run like they did last year. And because of one game, they don't get that opportunity.
Is the biggest regret, Damon, not having Roger Beshens come in and teach the entire pitching staff the football?
Well, I mean, it certainly seems as though Brent Strom didn't pull his weight this season. And I actually mean that. I'm not even saying that tongue in cheek. Like I'm more mad personally at Brent Strom and the pitching staff, in that whole side of things, than I am at Torey specifically. But I think if you need to make changes, why not have Roger Beshens come in and teach you guys how to throw the football slider?
Like a football. Right?
I mean, that could have changed everything.
Here's my thing with this whole situation is that I don't think that there's enough talked about the stop and starts for this team as far as the injuries go, right? And I think that's what really kind of, and every team has had injuries. Every team has had catastrophic injuries. I'm not acting like the Diamondbacks had extra injuries. It just felt like every time they got a guy back, another guy got injured. It was a joke that we made about it being like the baseball gods sacrificing somebody's hamstring for somebody else's, shoulder or whatever, right? But
they were never whole.
They were never whole. And even when they were whole, there was a very small amount of time for them to get right and get back on some sort of into a baseball program where they were comfortable and back at 100% until there wasn't enough time left in the season. And it felt like that a little bit, right? We had that last game, obviously against the Padres team that was giving the same effort maybe as the Mets were in game 2 today, but a Padres team out there playing baseball nonetheless that the Diamondbacks absolutely walloped. And on that day, it felt like that team was finally complete and back to themselves that we've seen despite their struggles over the week. It was just too little too late. It was the last game of the season. And by that point, they don't have any more games for them to have that offense come out and catch fire and stay hot against and to win them more baseball games. They really just ran out of time. And I feel like the injuries were the biggest story of this season. Obviously, also, you got the fact that the Diamondbacks went out and spent a whole lot of money during the offseason, especially on pitching, and that never really seemed to work out for them. Not only did they lose Eduardo Rodriguez for most of the season, but then he was inconsistent. He did have some good starts in there. Like, there's some encouraging things about both Jordan Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez going into next season. But this season,
more so about Erod, I would say.
Erod,
I don't know if Jordan Montgomery, if I'm being totally honest, ever really showed a whole lot of signs of turning a corner.
He definitely wasn't the guy that the Diamondbacks went out and spent $25 million on. That's for sure. You know what I mean? At no point during the season.
If I had to point at any player, he'd be the biggest culprit because you expected to get a front line starting pitcher that this team was begging for all season.
I don't even want to go back and watch that episode. I don't want to watch the breaking podcast we did about them acquiring Jordan Montgomery. I can't even look at myself in the amount of excitement I probably had.
The things that were said on that podcast.
Oh, they can't be unsaid. I can't take them back. You know what I mean? Like, that's what feels the worst.
Top
is the
5
regrets.
starting rotation in baseball, Derek. We both called it. We were all over it.
Yeah, that was some good things.
We just mixed up top 5 and bottom 5. It was just a one word difference. So
I think at one point I said the Diamondbacks were going to win 90 to 95 games this season, and that makes me sick considering that if they had won that, we wouldn't be sitting here so sad right now. But I mean, I guess the bigger thing is like, what is your assessment? I guess that's how I feel about what's the biggest collapse of the season. Would you agree that the pitching and the injuries to the pitching was the biggest problem, like overall?
Yeah, the pitching is 100% the biggest problem. I mean, it is very, very hard to make the postseason and go on a run when you have a team-wide pitching staff in the high 4s. It just doesn't really happen. If the Diamondbacks had made the postseason this year, I think on like an era-adjusted, league-adjusted basis, I'd have to go and see what their OPS or what their ERA plus was as a team. There are not that many teams that have made the postseason with that bad of an ERA plus. The D-backs pitching was very, very poor this year. And I'm looking right now at a list of all their pitchers and sorting by innings pitched. And at the top is Brandon Pfaadt, who was inconsistent, finished with a 4.71 ERA, right? There's Ryan Nelson, there's Zac Gallen. But then number 4 and number 5, the guys who got the 4th and 5th most innings on this team this year, were Jordan Montgomery and Slade Ciccone. And Jordan Montgomery threw 117 innings with a 6.23, and Slade Ciccone threw 77 innings with a 6.66. That is almost 200 innings that you are giving to a couple of pitchers that basically combined for a 6.5 ERA, which in this era of baseball is about the worst pitcher in the entire sport. And so, yeah, like the top end talent, I think is still there. Like Zac Gallen didn't have a terrible season and he was available most of the year, but the guys that stepped in to fill in struggled, and Jordan Montgomery also really struggled. And you put it all together and it was just a group that was really never consistent the entire year.
Elise put it in the chat, and also Jacob Franklin texted me earlier about it, but apparently Ken Kendrick said today on the radio that he was kind of the one that pushed for the Jordan Montgomery signing rather than Mike Hazen, which is interesting, and I guess it makes it eating the money on that feel a little bit better, right?
Yeah, because it wasn't Hazen asking Ken Kendrick for the money. It was the other way around. However, there are potential ramifications about Ken Kendrick being a bit gun shy to spend going forward. I mean, the way with that bid him, he might just say, hey, maybe it's not worth it to go out and
For
spend
sure,
on
but
these
don't you think
high-priced
it'd be
free
worse
agents.
if it was the other way around? If
Oh,
Mike
God,
Hazen had
yes.
asked for the
Yes,
money and he was like,
1,000% it
if
would be
you're
worse.
sure about it, and then
Right.
it didn't work out in this fashion,
Yeah.
then it'd be like he'll never spend money on a player ever again. It would feel like
Sure.
in that circumstance. So
Well, let's if we haven't made you sad enough yet, may I present to you the Diamondbacks playoff odds this season?
Oh yeah, this is
Oh.
pretty bad.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Oh my gosh.
Let's take a look, boys. Shall we? Yeah.
I like how
I can't sing that song because we'll get DMCA, right? I can't sing any songs like that, but you get the idea where I was going there.
I
You know
like how
Tom Petty.
Kevin like tried to cushion the blow by putting our logo
Yeah, that's a nice
on top of
nice
the very
attempt.
end of the chart.
Nice attempt.
This was not a slow, gradual collapse, right? This was the Diamondbacks having a 93% chance, I believe it is, to make the postseason 9 days ago. And the day after that, they were up 8-0 in the third inning. If you had calculated their postseason odds at that moment, which unfortunately there's no way for us to actually get this information, but I think it's probably about 96, 97%, because they were basically, you know, almost assured of another win on top of what they'd already built. They were about to sweep the Brewers, right? It would have been a 4-game sweep, and it would have been hard to really question their ability to make the playoffs in the last week of the season. So yeah, that chart just kind of tells the whole story right there.
devastating.
It's pretty disgusting. And I mean, odds are what they are, right? Computers are stupid, but computers also take a lot of factors into consideration. And it's just tough to see how quickly things went bad for this team. I think that's what's really the hardest part about seeing that sudden drop on that disgusting graphic that some idiot decided to put up on the screen. And
It
show
definitely
us.
wasn't me.
Yeah, make us all feel sad.
I will also say, if we can pull up the chart one more time, that I had almost, like, I know that in the first half of the Diamondbacks season, they didn't play particularly well, but that feels like such a distant memory at this point.
Yeah, where
Like,
they were down below 50%.
Yeah, I mean, the postseason odds curve is generally trending downward from the start of the season all the way into July. And then to the D-backs' credit, they really dug themselves out and went on an incredible run. They were the best team in baseball in July, I believe. They were one of the best teams in baseball, if not the best in August. And they created a really nice cushion for themselves. And then they basically undid all of that in the final month, and especially the final week of the season. So
It was a really disappointing start to the season.
yes,
Not
100%.
that, like, it wasn't like as if they were the worst team in baseball. It was as if they left a ton of games on the table.
Yes, they really did.
They
Because
did.
it felt like, at least for, you know, the first month, 2 months of the season, like they could have been competitive with some of the best records in baseball if they closed out games the way that they could have. And
Yeah.
it ended up being where, you know, they were hovering right around. They were not bad enough where their odds were still in like the 40% range, wherever that was. And then, of course, that purple patch of form just like skyrocketed their odds to 90 and then all the way back down. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't as if they were awful at the start. They just really left a lot of games on the table.
That August 25th date that I referenced there, that's the highest that their playoff odds ever got, and it was 96.8%.
Wow.
So they peaked at about 97% just a little over a month ago. And yeah, it goes to show that these, you know, we look at these playoff odds numbers and they only mean so much. 97 is not 100. So there you go.
I'm going to blame the Arizona Diamondbacks for everything going wrong for them. But
I think
I'm
that's
not going
fair.
to blame the players or the coaches or even the trainer, Max Esposito, even though he's like very, very closely related to Espo in this office. I don't trust that man. But
Is Max Esposito related to Greg Esposito?
they're just both Espositos. And I don't like, there's
Okay.
something shady going on.
Yeah,
I don't
Espos-
like,
and we
it's
know
definitely.
Espos are dangerous.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
radical. But they're not just radical. They're dangerous, Jesse. I don't know if you've heard the campaign. And yeah, it is in relation to Paul Sewald because you guys are right, but it's not. I'm going to blame the Arizona Diamondbacks for inviting Frank the Tank to throw out a goddamn pitch at one of our baseball games. Your love for social media darlings finally sunk the entire franchise. In what world do you bring a super fan from another team? I don't care if he wanted to throw out the first pitch at every. You tell him no. You tell him out. You know who else wants to throw out a first pitch at a Diamondbacks game? All three of us and Kevin and my dog Cosmo. We all want to throw out the first pitch. But you know who hasn't? Any of us, right? And that's because you guys don't let us. And you could have said the same thing to Frank. You could have said, no, absolutely not, Frank. Get your. Can I say?
Yeah.
Get your ass out of here, Frank. But no, you let him throw out the first pitch. It broke Paul Sewald. It broke this team. And who ended our goddamn season?
Yeah.
The New York Mets ended our season. That's who ended our season. So I blame you. Whoever decided to let Frank the Tank, you're the one that cost the Diamondbacks the season.
So fitting that it was the Mets and their lackadaisical effort that is the reason that the team doesn't win when Frank the Tank derailed Paul Sewald's season and cost us multiple games as well. I mean, it almost feels designed by Frank when you kind of put it that way.
Like it was a
a criminal mastermind type of plan.
But it was more like
the
Mr.
D-backs
Bean,
down from the
right?
inside.
Like he kind of like fumbled his way into ruining the Diamondback season. It wasn't like he was a smooth double agent. No, we knew what he was the whole time. And we were like, oh, that guy can't hurt us. Well, guess what happened? He did.
Yeah.
Should I put up the playoff odds again? And should we calculate back to the day when he came out to the yard?
Again.
I actually, I was just thinking about that.
It was August 25th, Jesse.
No, it wasn't.
Was it earlier than that?
No, because that was the narrative with Frank the Tank, which we covered at
that
the time.
He broke Paul Sewald.
He didn't break the Diamondbacks. He broke Paul Sewald in
so
particular.
Like July,
and Sewald is the guy who caught him.
Yeah.
So I think it was the beginning of July, because obviously the whole month of July for Sewald was pretty rough. I think it was like June
30th.
June 30th. I think
June 30th.
I think is correct. Yeah, it was like June 30th. And the Diamondbacks actually played
around him.
They played really well for the 2 months after that, but Paul Sewald did not play particularly well. So do with that what you will. It is a big miss that Frank the Tank got the invite before Cosmo. I think that's the real tragedy here.
That is a tragedy.
I'm still trying to figure out which of my dogs bit me. It might have been Cosmo. We haven't gotten that. We need to CSI that too. But one thing that we do know is that Christian Walker is a free agent after this season, and we don't know what the future holds for him. He did make some comments about, of course, his ties here, and it sounded a bit like he wanted to come back, but he also said like it was not. Obviously, it's still an unknown for him. And here's what Christian Walker had to say about his future.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that you think about constantly. Even the last few weeks, just trying to channel every moment, the good stuff, the bad stuff. No matter how frustrated you are, you look around and you think like, a lot of my best friends are in this clubhouse. Wasted. A lot of unknowns still. Uncertainty. There's obviously a good chance I land here, but still some unknown. This is all I know as far as my big league experience. I think that's emotional as well.
Fred Stillman in the chat says Walker is gone, wants to get paid like he's 27. Love the guy, but he's likely gone. I'm a little bit more. I guess I feel like there's a chance because if he does test free agency, like we saw with Lourdes Gurriel Jr. last year. The Diamondbacks were able to bring him back. He was a guy that I didn't think was going to come back simply because of the World Series run in the season that Lourdes had last year. I thought that it was his chance to kind of bank on that last probably big contract of his career and possibly get paid above what his, market value might be based on factors, right? And instead he came back to the Diamondbacks. I think Christian Walker, the one thing I guess going for the Diamondbacks here is that he didn't have that strong of a season. Obviously, the injuries there at the end of the season kind of throttled him a little bit, and he wasn't his normal self. But I think that they do have a good chance of bringing him back.
I personally, my gut tells me they will bring him back because I think that they're kind of in this mode of we're trying to be a competitive team right now, and I do think you lose that Madison Bumgarner contract, maybe it just fits in a little bit kind of nicely in that spot there where you're keeping around the same payroll that you went into this year with. That being said, I was having the conversation earlier today. Like, I don't know what the smart move is, because he is an older player. And he does have like his deficiencies. I think he's such an important part of the culture here on this team.
Sure.
I think the guys look at, especially the younger players, look at him as like sort of like one of the leaders, especially. And that's an important
100%.
part of how the Diamondbacks want their image to be as a baseball team. And I think they think that stuff is important. They value that. But he's also like, his deficiencies are like, he with runners in scoring position, he's not great. He struggles a lot of times in the bigger moments, it feels like. Like when the backs are absolutely up against the wall, is Christian Walker getting that big hit for you?
We've talked about that.
Yeah, plenty
Christian
of times.
Walker this season, 826 OPS with runners in scoring position.
Pretty good.
Which is better than his overall OPS. I mean, by that number, he was better with runners in scoring
Shouldn't
position
you be better
than
with
he
runners
was
in
with
scoring
that.
position, hypothetically?
I don't think so. I mean, I think league-wide, the numbers are about the same. So if a guy has outperformed, but I guess runners in scoring position is different than like high leverage versus low leverage. But even then, high leverage, at least on Baseball Reference, they have him at an 835 OPS. But I understand what you're saying. It does kind of feel like that. It has at least felt like that at times where Christian Walker in those biggest moments, maybe struggles to come through a little bit more.
This season, I can just think off the top of my head, seeing Ketel Marte hit home runs that won this team game.
Yes.
Corbin Carroll hit home runs or big hits. You had Gino Suarez that had some huge hits during games, and Jake McCarthy during that stretch when he was really hot. Right? Like, so Christian Walker does it. And again, I've said this about Christian Walker. He does it in games where the team wins and you didn't necessarily need that like late inning heroics, but it does feel like, I mean, at times you don't see as many of those hits, but the numbers say otherwise. And again, that's just because
he feels like a solo bomb machine.
Yeah. Or
to me,
I mean, he also kind of gets like a big like hit in those big moments, maybe not that home run or whatever. And that's kind of what we're expecting.
He did have a 1765 OPS against the Dodgers this season.
I was going to say, he is our Dodgers killer. That
you really want that? So you really want that to go away? I mean, all that fun, but of course we don't know what the future holds for Christian Walker or few players. We obviously know this is probably the last we've seen of Paul Sewald in a Diamondbacks uniform. That's just speculation, but most likely that's the end of his time with this team. I like Sewald was very kind on his way out, and he told me that he thanked us very much for the last 2 years, and all the things we've said. I'm sure it's like again, Paul Sewald's one of those guys that went through some struggles, and there was a point where of course, even we on this show didn't agree with, what the Diamondbacks should do with him. And obviously, I'm sure the Diamondbacks felt the same internally. This was a guy that brought so much stability to this team last season and really was a big reason why they were able to not only win late and get into the postseason, but despite blowing games in the postseason, very big games there, and that we remember, it's still one of those situations where you have to wonder if the Diamondbacks would have even been able to go on that magical postseason run without Paul Sewald last season.
Yeah, the Paul Sewald trade was a win because he helped you get to the World Series, and you don't get there without him. End of story, right? But that doesn't mean that this season wasn't rough for him. It obviously was, and the Diamondbacks had to take him out of that role for a reason. In the coming days, we'll talk about free agents and our thoughts on some of the guys that could be off this team next year. Randall Grichuk and Jock Peterson are two really big names there. Both of those guys have mutual options for next year, which they both played way too well for those mutual options to possibly get picked up on their end. So the D-backs are going to have a lot of work to do over the offseason, and we're about to dive into that for the next several months. So stay tuned for all of that.
I don't want to do it.
You kind of enlightened me to the mutual option thing, Jesse, of like, when is that ever really going to work out? Typically, the team is either like, well, that's a good deal for us, or the player's like, oh, that's a good deal for me. Never both. So
that's why.
It's almost like you shouldn't even put them in contracts.
Yeah, but sometimes it's the only way to get that player in, and really it's security is what the player's looking for.
There's like a buyout that comes with it.
Yeah,
so
it's
it
buyout,
does. Yeah, it gives a little bit of money for the player.
And if you stink, you know what I mean? Like if you stink, you want whatever extra money you're going to get at, at the end of the year, like you said, with that buyout. So that's a big part of it. You're kind of investing in the unknown there. And again, sometimes that's that little thing that will help you, sign that deal that they're putting in front of you. And maybe that made the difference for Jock. He was an excellent signing. So was Randall Grichuk. The Diamondbacks did a great job with a lot of the signings on the, obviously in the position players side. I mean, Kevin Newman ended up being great for this team.
Yeah.
They made a couple pickups there, and Luis Guillorme and Josh Bell that also, were big factors at times for this team. So there were things that went right for them as well. But I really do feel like pitching things didn't go great. And even there, AJ Puck, that's a guy that's going to be on the team hopefully for the next 2 seasons, right?
Yeah, two more years of team control.
And that's a guy that ended up being one of the best pickups of the year. So there's some things to be positive about, but it's hard to be positive on a day like this.
He needs to be the closer, and that means we need to get another high leverage lefty arm so that we're not feeling like we have to save Puck to use in those types of situations.
Yeah.
That feels like a big piece this offseason.
Yeah, I think adding to the bullpen makes sense. They have all the same guys coming back, right? Like you could do worse than J Mart, AJ Puck, Kevin Ginkel, and Ryan Thompson. But yeah, adding another genuine back end arm there could do some good for sure.
Well, of course, we have a little bit more to get to, as well as talking about a big piece coming to gophnx.com that this guy is helping out on. Of course, that's on the other side of our break. But first, wanted to let you guys know about Branded Bills. Of course, Branded Bills is a local company here from Mesa, Arizona. And not only do they make some great collegiate hats you can see on the wall behind me, partnerships with ASU and U of A as part of their campus collection, but they can also get your brand a hat and help you stand apart from the crowd. Brandon Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. You can start your order and their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel you need. Also, if you're just looking to buy yourself a hat, go check out the wonderful collection they have. They have Arizona hats. Right now, you can get yourself some amazing Halloween hats as well. It's spooky season, so you might as well get the appropriate wear for that time of year. Head to brandedbills.com and use code PHNX for 20% off your order. Unfortunately, we have no more baseball games to discuss going to, or at least for us here in town. But
we might. Arizona Fall League. Derek.
Arizona Fall League. He's not right. We're gonna be fall guys once again. So keep it locked here, obviously, for AFL coverage. But if you want to go to games like AFL games, if you want to go to sporting events like football, basketball, hockey. Oh, it's too soon for that too. I'm sorry. I'm just hurting my feelings a lot tonight. Forget hockey, but the other sporting events.
ASU hockey.
ASU hockey. Yeah, he's right. Oh, wow. Good cover. Game Time has you covered with save up to 60% off by buying tickets last minute for all of those things. They also have their new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. You can filter out the fluff with Game Time Picks to show you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through all of those tickets. So make sure to check out Game Time. Of course, they have the all-in pricing, which you can toggle this feature to show you the total up front, so there's no surprises when you get to checkout. They also have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account. Use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Damon, give it to me.
It's game time.
It's game time. And of course, there are lots of events to go to that aren't baseball or those other things that I said that makes you perhaps feel bad about your sport life. This man always feels bad about sports. That's the way it goes for him. But I know
they've ruined me.
They do. And I mean, we're Arizona sports fans, right? We should be used to this. This shouldn't be anything new. I've been shot before. It doesn't hurt that bad, right? But it's still, and I hate to say this, I hate to leave the night with this note, but it is still one of the biggest meltdowns in Diamondbacks history. That's for sure.
It is the biggest meltdown in Diamondbacks history.
I didn't need that. You didn't need to add that on. We didn't need to pile on, but it is, like you said, the worst, biggest meltdown. And of course,
it feels like the biggest collapse in Arizona sports history, really, in terms of like where they were at to make the playoffs to not making the playoffs. I mean, it is pretty insurmountable odds, really.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. It's pretty terrible. But of course, we do have what I was referencing earlier, which is a wonderful piece, which will probably make you even sadder than you are right now. But it will cover the biggest meltdowns in Arizona sports history. And that's a collaboration between our very own Craig Morgan, Jesse Friedman, and that Espo guy I talked about earlier that maybe shouldn't be trusted. What do you got? Anything?
Yeah, read it.
Read it.
Click the link.
We get it. You might have moved on from baseball and stuff.
That'll be a pretty interesting article, and I'm excited to read it, and then also just like wallow in sadness after I'm done with it, and just like, oh, remember that collapse? Oh no, but also remember this one.
It's gonna be a little sad there's no way around that with a story like this, but it was me and Craig talked about doing this a few days ago when the Diamondbacks were trending in this direction. And it's just kind of the natural question that I think is probably on a lot of people's minds right now, right? This is a really bad collapse. Arizona sports fans have been through some rough times in a variety of sports over the years.
How bad is it rank?
Let's rank the misery. Right, that it's
Let's rank the worst you've ever felt in your whole life.
Absolutely.
You feel bad about this one? Well, we're going to compare it to other times where sports teams in this town made you feel bad. Cannot wait for it. But
pity party,
should be fascinating, and I think it will be honestly very eye-opening. I think we should send it to any of your friends that like sports and maybe root for teams in another town. Who pick on you, and maybe they'll stop picking on you once they see this list of the biggest meltdowns in Arizona sports history. We do want to give some love to our super chats. Thank you guys so much now, then, and forever for your super chats. We thank you guys so much for just everything this year and all of the love, all of this audience that we have built here that's grown. We appreciate you guys. Sean says, just wanted to say I love you all in this chat. Sean, we love you. We appreciate you. We're sorry. We saw you slip into madness from being a very positive, excited Diamondbacks fans to being drugged down.
That was sad. I didn't know if you noticed that when him and Thunderbolt were agreeing on a topic together.
Once Sean and Thunderbolt were, I was like, oh, we lost Sean.
No, like Sean, like a month ago was like talking crap to Thunderbolt in the comments, being like, "You better come in here when they win too."
Now they're on the same page.
And now it's like they're on the same team. Like that we lost Sean. It hurts.
Like sometimes
it hurts.
Sometimes when you have a mutual enemy like the Diamondbacks, like these two have, you become friends. Thomas Drury, thank you so much for your super chat. It's amazing. Thank you. He says, thanks to you guys for the coverage and the chats through the hard days and the great days. Love the PHNX crew. All hail the mayor. Thank you, sir.
Wow.
Hope to see those snakes answer back next season. Keep the D-backs south of Utah. You're damn right. You're damn right. You sent another super chat. Thank you so much. We appreciate you so much. Calvin says, too bad the D-backs are out, but that's what happens when you don't secure W's. You are not wrong. Thank you for your super chat. He said, you may have answered this already, but how do you see the offseason shaping up in terms of getting ready for next year? It's going to be interesting, right? Because I think that this team built on kind of the wave and the success of that World Series appearance. They really wanted to capitalize on how good the team was, strike while the iron's hot, add to it, and make them a World Series contender again this year. That didn't happen. So I don't know how this is going to impact the way that they obviously, shape this team going forward, who's out, who comes back. But we are going to be here all offseason covering all of that for you guys. We aren't going anywhere. So, of course, make sure to keep it locked right here, and we will keep you updated on all of that.
I'll also say just real quick, tomorrow will be a big day for that as well. We obviously got to talk with a lot of players today, as well as Torey Lovullo briefly, but tomorrow is officially the exit interview day. So we will hear from both Torey and Mike Hazen for more of an extended time tomorrow and get kind of a start on the offseason and what the Diamondbacks needs are, maybe what their payroll situation is like. So tomorrow's show will be at 2 p.m. Because we want to leave ourselves some time after that media availability. So be sure to join us then, and we'll kind of get started on all that stuff.
Absolutely. Piece of Yoshi, our guy. Thank you so much, Piece of Yoshi. Also a double agent like Frank the Tank and like potentially maybe Paul Sewald. Piece of Yoshi says, conspiracy theory, the Mets threw the game to get back at us for DFAing Luis Guillorme and Perdomo's all-star selection last year.
Probably made Yoshi so happy too when that happened.
Known Mets fan.
Yeah, well, he's just a dirty Mets fan.
Why are the Mets like trying to get back at the D-backs for DFAing Luis Guillorme?
Oh, because we were supposed to pick him up and keep him. He was a Mets legend, Jesse. You don't know that? Come on.
Okay.
Get your story straight. Cruz, thank you, Cruz, so much for your chat. He said, where does the team go from here? Gabby extension first move? I just don't know what moves they can make after this. Yeah, we don't really either at this point. But like I said, we will hopefully get some answers for you. And as that shapes up, I'm sure the Diamondbacks right now don't really know what their game plan is and how they're going to attack this offseason. Our hope, obviously, is that they're aggressive and they continue to try to spend money and hang with these teams in the National League West. Right now, I think the most devastating thing would be them not doing anything, and I doubt we'll see that. So,
yeah, this would feel worse, right? If looking ahead to 2025, you weren't expecting the Diamondbacks to be contenders. Like if this was sort of a, like a stopping point where you had a whole lot of guys that were really important to the team leaving. That's not the case. There are some key players to replace, as we've touched on. There's some decisions to be made, but going into 2025, the D-backs, I think, are going to be a good baseball team, right? Like I think they're going to have another shot at this next season, especially next season's going to be a big one with Zac Gallen and Merrill Kelly theoretically in their last years. So it's not like this was the only bite at the apple for them.
I have to say real quick, and people might not like this, but you have Gabby under control still for a little while. I have to see that he can do more to finish a season before I'm willing to give him an extension at this point, because it derails this team. We've seen it 2 seasons in a row now. When Gabby's not there, they're not playing that great of baseball. He's so important to the pitching staff, it seems.
It definitely felt like there was an impact on the pitching staff.
Last year was, the darkest of days without Gabby. I mean, it was just brutal when he was not playing. Like I need to see that he can sustain that season before I'm willing to talk extension with him.
HH Rocker 5515, thank you for your super chat. He said, just an FYI, I got a paragraph of a comment waiting for the post stream comments because I can't afford 1,500 characters. Well, sorry about that.
I'm excited to read it.
Yeah,
I read all the
check
comments.
It out.
Yeah, we'll check every single one of them out. Of course, we thank you guys again for being here. We thank you guys for being Diamondbacks fans. Most importantly, we thank you for, of course, subscribing to PHNX Sports and for being hanging with us all season long, especially here in the live chat. If you have done so, like Jesse said, we'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. for another show. So make sure to join us for that. And we'll be here all week. I mean, again, we're going to cover the postseason a little bit. We're not going to get super crazy into it. Those teams don't deserve our love.
You don't want to do a post-game show tomorrow night?
Absolutely not. I refuse.
For Padres Braves?
We are done. I'm scheduling some vacation time, pal.
You don't want to talk Mets Brewers tomorrow night, Derek?
The Diamondbacks aren't the only one going to Cancun. I have my own plans as well. But of course, in the meantime, make sure to follow us all on Twitter. I'm at cap_Kman with a K. This man next to me is Damon Dog. That's DAWG. We are Damon's dogs. Bark, bark. This
doesn't feel right when Damon is behind, when he's on the camera, and we're like,
just
we're
move farther away from me.
I know,
we're
like
Damon's
it.
dogs. Bark, bark. That feels right.
Yeah.
Come back in. All right, and of course, this man is at Jesse N. Friedman. The Kev on the ones and twos is at Kev Tom Wrights. That's THOMWRIT. Yes, but our show, most importantly, is at PHNX_D-backs, and all roads do, of course, lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We appreciate you guys so much. We thank you for your time. We love you so much. And again, we'll be back tomorrow. So make sure to join us for more from Chase Field on the final day of media availability. And of course, just a little more sadness. We'll bring a little more sadness back for you. But until then, hearts, we love you. We thank you guys. Hope you have a decent night. I know it's not going to be a great one if you're a Diamondbacks fan, but hopefully have a good night and a better tomorrow. And until we meet again, we thank you for your time. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but man, it's so much more fun when you don't get eliminated from playoff contention.
We all silly like the mayor.